Welcome everyone, Costin here with my video ranking the legendary lords for the warriors and champions of chaos, which are pretty much the same thing, though they are different DLC packs. Currently the warriors of chaos are the best race faction in the entire game because of their recruitment, the way they can handle units, the way they can upgrade units. That is actually fairly significant. The fact that they can take regular marauders and then turn them into warriors of chaos and then into chosen, or they can take them and turn them into horsemen and then into chaos knights and then potentially into skull crushers of Khorne, does give them a great deal of power. Their economy is pretty good. They have a very easy time with vassalization. They have good mechanics at the moment, and I certainly think that it is a model in a lot of ways for Creative Assembly to follow for future Total War games, or for how to redesign factions even in this game. I'm not saying every faction should be like the Warriors of Chaos, but certainly they have elevated this race compared to the ones that have existed before. But which are the best legendary lords to play? Which are the worst? So I'm going to rank all 8 of them. The 3 original, Archaon, Kholek, and Sigvald, and the 5 new ones, Azazel, Festus, Valkia, Vilitch, and the free one, Bellicor, that everyone has access to if they can play Immortal Empires. And by the way, if you don't own any DLC, Bellicor is the best legendary lord you can play at the moment. So let's get started. So at number 8, we have Prince Sigvald the Magnificent, the Joffrey Baratheon of Total War, or the Joffrey Baratheon of Warhammer Fantasy. He is a really big bastard. He is a champion of Slaanesh, though in this game he counts as a champion of Chaos Undivided with a Slaaneshi tint. And that is actually his problem. That's why he ranks so low. I mean, he does start with a pretty good army. You do get 4 Chaos Warriors. You do start in a pretty good position. There's a lot of Dark Fortresses around you. Lots of options for vassalization. And yet it doesn't matter because he does have some major issues. You would think he would start in a pretty good spot, being a champion of Chaos Undivided, but with Slaaneshi tint. So he starts with a Gift of Chaos Undivided and a Gift of Slaanesh. Gifts of Slaanesh can be really solid, especially the Endless March, which gives you a significant amount of campaign movement range for only 15% upkeep. You can certainly pay for this as any legendary lord of the Warriors of Chaos. He also gains an advantage in technology, starting with the Slaaneshi brand, as well as the Vows of Excess. Okay, so you're going to be favoring Slaanesh quite heavily if you're playing as Sigvald. The problem. So, Sigvald he doesn't use Chaos Undivided Corruption, which he should. Instead, he uses Slaaneshi Corruption to determine his public order, which is a major problem since your main settlement buildings generate Chaos Undivided Corruption. Your commandments generate Chaos Undivided Corruption. I don't have a province here to show you, but they do generate Chaos Undivided Corruption, which is not going to do anything for you. If you want to get public order, you need to use Slaaneshi Corruption. It can be a problem doing that with Sigvald, because although he might generate quite a bit of Slaaneshi Corruption, you are going to struggle with that, and that means he is actually the only legendary lord of the Warriors of Chaos who struggles with public order, because Azazel, for instance, doesn't have this problem. However, there is more to it than just that. Sigvald, of course, is going to heavily favor Slaanesh, though you can make armies that favor the other gods, but he personally, in his army, he is going to heavily favor Slaanesh. What's the problem with that? Well, if we look at the warband upgrades, like he does hurt with the Hell Cannon, he can get the Mirror Guard once he gets to level 2, so he does certainly have some significant advantages from the very get-go. That Hell Cannon is incredibly powerful, the Mirror Guard, pretty decent. And he's got a pretty good army to begin with. But here's the issue with the warband upgrades. If we look at Slaanesh, Slaanesh doesn't have great cavalry. They don't have great chariots. They can only get Chaos Knights of Slaanesh, which, to be quite honest with you, the Chaos Knights of Slaanesh just aren't going to be the best units you can possibly get, to be honest. You want to get good cavalry, go Khorne, or go Tzeentch, because you will get either the Doom Knights or the Skull Crusher. Hell, there isn't necessarily that much difference between the Chaos and regular Chaos Knights and the Chaos Knights of Slaanesh. They're not really gaining anything with cavalry. What about infantry? Well, that's even worse, because the only infantry you can get up to are the Chosen of Slaanesh, the chosen of Slaanesh with Hell Scourges are just pretty awful. And the regular chosen, yeah, they're pretty decent units, but the chosen you want are the chosen with great weapons. And he's always going to have a lot more when it comes to Undivided with the Slaaneshi Authority. He starts with 3, then he will Undivided Authority. So yeah, Sigvald does have some issues when it comes to maintaining his own army. I think the best thing you could do if you're playing Sigvald, if you want a really strong army, I mean, you could make it work with Undivided, I suppose, and just go Aspiring Champions, or just go Chosen with great weapons. Like, there's a very funny video of like 19 Aspiring Champions in his army, though you may reduce that to like something like 17 plus 2 heroes plus him. There are ways you can make it work, but I would certainly say Slaanesh has the worst army of all of the Warriors of Chaos Legendary Lords, and it doesn't help Sigvald's situation that he does have that corruption issue. On top of that, he personally, if we look at his skill tree, yeah, he gets tribute from vassals, missile block chance, melee, defense. Okay, that's pretty decent. Income from post-battle loot, it's okay, but it's not particularly great. And yeah, his skill tree is not really that great. He's also not the best melee combatant or the best fighter of the legendary lords of the Warriors of Chaos. In fact, I dare say he's the worst. Well, maybe Festus is worse than he is, sure, but Festus has other things that he brings to the table that Sigvald does not. So, number 8 for Sigvald the Magnificent. And number 7, we have Azazel, the champion of Chaos of Slaanesh, who is dedicated to Slaanesh, unlike Sigvald, so you can only recruit Slaaneshi units, which might seem like an incredibly limiting factor. Absolutely. Well, Slaaneshi units and Undivided units, which might seem like an incredibly limited factor, which, to be quite honest with you, it is in a lot of ways, because Slaanesh, as I've already said, with Sigvald, doesn't have the best units, dedicated units. You're actually far better off going Undivided than going Slaanesh, I feel, though good luck doing that with Azazel. Azazel is a monster of a combatant, and he does certainly have some benefits: character experience gain, souls from post-battle, bonus versus infantry, control local province, not necessarily too important, but that casualty replenishment is going to be pretty nice. There are some things that do work with Azazel that don't work for Sigvald, and he doesn't have a corruption problem. He actually uses the proper corruption, and Slaaneshi corruption is actually quite nice, probably the best. I mean, some people like Nurgle because it gives it growth. I personally do think that Slaaneshi corruption is probably the best corruption that you can get in the game. Gift-wise, he does start with an Undivided one and a Slaaneshi one, though you can only get Slaaneshi gifts, and he does have a tree dedicated to Slaanesh, which, as I've already said, has the worst army that you can get. Though, thankfully, you do have all the Undivided stuff, and in general, the Undivided stuff is the strongest you can get. So, make no mistake, none of these legendary lords are weak. None of them are even close to being weak. Some just are better than others. That's how I describe it. If there's any issue, I would say that Azazel does have, and maybe this just does tie into how Slaanesh does have to be played. But the way Slaanesh ends up being played, the way you want to play Slaanesh, is you want to force vassalization on the human faction. So you don't necessarily want to end up fighting Castalten. You just start making deals, maybe with Castalten, maybe with some others, and then force vassalization on them, while you end up fighting the Norscan factions for Dark Fortresses over here, like the Doom Keep, the Forbidden Citadel, and so on. Like, there's 4, 5 even in Norska, 6 even in Norska that you can get. There's also one in Karakadrak. The problem, I guess, is that it's not necessarily the best campaign style, I suppose, though it kind of makes sense for any Lord of the Warriors of Chaos to end up fighting Chaos first and then uniting the tribes and then going there. You're going to end up fighting Trog from the very start. He has an incredibly powerful early game army because he starts with some good units, capacity to recruit those units from the start, and he will get the Forbidden Citadel from early on. It is a harsh fight if you're picking it. Probably one of the hardest campaign starts from that perspective of the Warriors of Chaos, if you do decide to go for it. And you should go for it, because you're not gonna get the fight. You're not gonna get the Dark Fortresses south, and the main benefit of the Warriors of Chaos is getting a lot of these Dark Fortresses early on, and taking advantage of that situation to grow their economy, get a lot of armies, and then steamroll Kislev and the Empire and so on. So yeah, Azazel, from my perspective, he's in a better spot than Sigvald, but he does have his own issues, and he is going to be, in some ways, even more limited than Sigvald. Like, if you want to get armies of Nurgle or Khorne or Tzeentch, as Sigvald, you can at least do it. As Azazel, you only got Slaanesh or Undivided, so it is more limited from that perspective. But yeah, he doesn't have the same bugs, the same issues, and he is a far stronger combatant than Sigvald is. And number 6, we have Vilitch the Curseling. Some people might think he deserves a higher spot. I think he does certainly have limitations as a champion of Tzeentch. Tzeentch is an okay spot, not unlike Slaanesh, because Tzeentch at least has some useful stuff. Like, if I look at the warband recruitment, you have Chosen of Tzeentch and you have Chosen of Tzeentch with halberds. No Hellscourges over here, and you have some really good cavalry. And you can also get some ranged units as well. As for your starting position, actually, let's talk about Vilitch himself. Vilitch is an incredibly powerful caster as well as a powerful melee combatant. So he gets some significant benefits when it comes to both of those. He gets casualty replenishment for Forsaken and Spawn of Tzeentch. I mean, those are okay units. The Spawn especially can do quite a lot of damage, though it does have its own downsides. Diplomatic relation benefits plus 20. Yeah, okay. I'll talk about how that's irrelevant compared to another legendary lord. But yeah, there's some good stuff over here. And you do have a specific Tzeentch tree over here if you are playing as Vilitch. The problems that I see with... actually, just to continue down the trend, just one more thing to say. Starting situation is actually really good. Yes, you do start at war with the Grey Bastion. You don't start at war with Miao Ying. And you do have access to free 4, if we count Nangao, 5 Dark Fortresses within easy reach. And you only need to fight one faction of Chaos to take one of these fortresses. Otherwise, you are fighting Cathay. The armies of the Warriors of Chaos will eat Cathay for dinner. Like, it is that kind of situation. You also get you also get the teleport stands that you can use. So much for the Great Bastion. You want to capture the capital of Cathay easily? Turn free? Something along those lines? You can do so. Just get a couple of units, teleport, you'll be able to recruit more Marauders, capture the capital, then deal with the Grey Bastion, then confederate the rest of these guys. Miao Ying will not intervene. You'll have a fairly easy campaign plan. What are the downsides of playing Vilitch? Well, he is dedicated to a particular god, and obviously there's always going to be limitations because of that. Having flexibility as the Undivided ones can be nice. It does say a lot about Sigvald, who does have that flexibility, that he isn't particularly great, despite that. I mean, it's not all that matters. But here's the problem. The Undivided gifts, okay, those are good. The gifts of Tzeentch, however, not so much. Sacrificing 10 control in all provinces for 35% research rate is absolutely not worth it. And most of these upgrades do only benefit, most of the gifts of Tzeentch only really benefit Tzeentch armies. Which, okay, I guess makes sense. And then there's some pretty good stuff over here. But there's nothing really, like, everyone gets good units, right? With gifts of chaos. Like, every single lord gets some really good units. With the exception of Slaanesh. But even then, yeah, the Keeper of Secrets, that can be a really nasty thing to deal with. But everyone gets some good units. However, you don't really gain campaign benefits. Yeah, the most you're really going to get that's useful is the Ties of Magic, though it does have a downside with a miscast base chance. That's pretty much it. You're more so going to rely on the Undivided gifts to keep you going. Lord effect-wise, you do have, you do get a portion of your own battle casualties being converted into souls. And when we look at Vilitch himself, in terms of his lord benefits, he does get a steal, 50% experience earned by other lords. Okay, that's decent, so you can become a powerhouse. Though Warhammer free Immortal Empires is less about a selfish legendary lord and more about having large and numerous armies spread across the map. In some ways, the fact he's actually stealing experience from his lords is a downside, not the benefit. The army he controls is always going to be your best army, and it's going to be able to sweep all behind, all in front of him, with the exception of perhaps some endgame armies. That isn't the issue. But you want your other armies to be led by high-level lords and to be really good. And yeah, there's obviously going to be some limitations. I'd say the Gifts of Sinnelleos are significantly better than the Gifts of Siege. Siege does have a better army, and Vilitch certainly has a better start. A far better start, I'd say, because the thing about Cafe, beyond the Dark Fortresses you can capture very quickly, the thing to know about Cafe is that, yes, there aren't necessarily a lot of Dark Fortresses to capture, though there is one here in Xiangyang. Despite the fact that there's not a lot of Dark Fortresses, there's a lot of options, a lot of possibilities for vassalization of quite a lot of factions. And the East in particular is the safest portion of the campaign map at the moment. So capture the entirety of the East, vassalize as many guys as you can, and then march west. You're safe. The only endgame event that can trigger currently in the game, the only endgame armies that can spawn in the East are some Wood Elven armies, I believe, here in the jungles of Chi-An. That's it. Outside of that, you will not have issues with your territory. Your territory will be safe. You will not face any major threats. Sure, further to the west, there is going to be Grimgor, Kholek, etc. But outside of that, your core territory is going to be very secure, and it's going to be a fairly safe campaign. He's just not the powerhouse that some other legendary lords can be. That's why he gets the number 6 spot. When I say powerhouse, I'm not talking about his own combat potential. He certainly has it with his spells. He's pretty crazy powerful in that respect. But I'm talking here about campaign potential. And number 5, there is Festus the Leechlord. In terms of combat potential, well, he doesn't really have it. He's more of a caster who is dependent on using his spells. They're pretty decent spells, but yeah, between him and Vilitch, I'd say Vilitch wins in that department hands down, because Vilitch isn't just a good caster and a better one than Festus, but he's also a great melee combatant. However, let's just say it, Nurgle is an incredibly powerful chaos god. The warband upgrades, yeah, you get the best chosen in the entire game. You get a wrecking ball of an army that can't really be compared to anyone else. Slower, sure. There are downsides to it. It is slower. But having some of the best infantry is actually a very significant benefit. And on top of that, since the vast majority of battles currently in the game are being minor settlement or siege battles, having those slow units is not necessarily a downside. Having strong, very sturdy units is actually a significant benefit in that kind of context. So Nurgle does get some fairly good advantages from that perspective, but there's more. We look at the gifts of Nurgle. So you get growth from each region for plus 75, which is quite a significant amount, and you can use it from the very start after winning a battle in all provinces. But even further than that, you do get 20% missile resistance for all units with the marks of Nurgle, and I do believe it stacks with the Ruinous Bulwark, which gives you 15. So you can get plus 35% missile resistance for all your Nurgle units, which are going to be pretty good. But on top of that, you also have Deadly Transmission, which is one of the best gifts of Chaos. I mean, I'd say the Sinnelleos one that gives you movement range, but you do pay more for your armies is probably the best. But having replenishment in enemy territory is exceptionally good as well. And of course you do get some good units. Actually, you get more than just good units. Whenever you get a pact or a gift to get a unit, like getting a Chaos War Shrine, getting Plague Drones, getting a Great Unclean One, you'll always get Nurglings as well. So you can get quite a lot of Nurglings to your armies. Generally, gift units can be limited in campaign. The fact you're getting so many Nurglings means that you can stack entire armies with them. Sure, there is a limit, of course, to how many gifts of chaos you can have, but the army, economy, growth of Nurgle is good. And that's without counting the plague situation, the plague cauldron of Nurgle. So with the plague cauldron, you can get some very substantial benefits. Put 6 control in every settlement. I mean, the Warriors of Chaos already have a situation where they'll never face rebellion, pretty much by default. But let's just ensure that never happens. Or let's spark rebellions. Let's reduce Lord recruitment capacity in a province. Put on significant buffs or debuffs on your enemy. There's quite a lot of things to like when you are playing as Nurgle. It is something completely different, even within the context of the Warriors of Chaos. Are there any downsides to this? Yeah, Festus is not the best combatant himself. He's not the best caster. He's not the best melee hero. And he does have some significant limitations at the start. He only has 2 Dark Fortresses within reach. He starts with 1 with the Brass Keep, and then he has Midnight. I do suppose one campaign plan would see you head out to Norska to get the Altar of the Crimson Harvest at the very least, and get the Scalings as a vassal, maybe even the guys who control Doomkeep, absolutely. But outside of that, you're mainly going to rely on vassalizing the Orcs, the Wood Elves, the Empire. You can vassalize the entire Empire. It wasn't available initially, but they added that in 2.1. So you can vassalize, like I vassalized Null. Though the problem is these vassals will not like you, because your diplomatic relations with them take a major hit because you have minus 100 aversion with human, with Imperial factions. You do have some good options, and it is crazy powerful, because you can get a vassal in the Wood Elves, and hey, let's have some of the best ranged units in the armies of the Warriors of Chaos, which are already strong enough without any ranged units except artillery. But let's add some of the most powerful ranged units as allied units, and you can certainly do that. I mean, you can do that as other legendary Lords of Chaos, but I would say Festus has access to that much earlier, and that gives him an advantage in that respect. He would be higher on this list if he had a better starting position. He does not. It's going to be a slower campaign, but damn, Nurgle is quite very, very powerful. He's good in growth, he's good in public order, he's good with the plagues in general, and with the replenishment in foreign territory. Festus, like with pretty much all the other legendary lords of the Warriors Chaos, is in a good spot. Just a bit slower, that's all you need to know. And number 4, we have Valkia the Bloody, the Bride of Khorne. She is a Khorne champion of Chaos. Khorne is okay. You don't have Chosen of Chaos, Chosen of Khorne with great weapons. That would make this the best melee faction in the entire game if you did. Sadly, you do not. Instead, you get dual weapons. They're okay, but yeah, great weapons just end up being better in larger situations. Though you do have the Skull Crushers or the Gore Beast Chariots of Khorne, which can be really nice to have. Also, Bloodthirsters, really, really powerful. Bloodletters as well as this particular meter. Valkia has a lot of things going for her. She's like a mini Skarbrand, but without all of the downsides, the major downsides that come from playing Skarbrand. Skarbrand has a lot of issues with his economy. He can go broke. He's basically a faction that has one trick, which is win battles, summon blood hosts, keep summoning blood hosts, overwhelm your enemies with numbers. But I mean, there's 2 downsides with that. 1, if you lose, you're screwed. 2, you have to fight a lot of manual battles. Valkia doesn't have that issue. Not at all. And she has many of the same benefits. Okay, so she gets Gore Queen, which means that when an enemy retreats from battle, an enemy army retreats from battle, she gets 35% campaign movement range. So if an army tries to retreat from Valkia, chances are many times she will be able to chase them down and kill them. There's a major quality of life change compared to how things generally work in a lot of campaigns. So many times the enemy will run away from a battle. She's a pretty strong melee combatant as well. She does have quite a few things going for her in that department. But there's more. Her faction effects affect her campaign movement range. So after you win a battle, you get 15% campaign movement range. So you can keep going. You can chase after retreating armies, then get a bit more campaign movement range. And then there's also research that gives you 10% campaign movement range after winning a battle. So you can go from battle to battle to battle, winning them without having to stop. And to complement this, you have the Gifts of Khorne. You start with 1. The one that you really want to use is Death's Bounty. This will give you 35% post-battle income and 35% income from raising settlements. Raise the settlements. Let your vassals worry about repopulating them. You just destroy them. You can get a ridiculous amount of money with Valkia the Bloody, and you can go from battle to battle. Keep the momentum going. Like, she's pretty much in the same vein as Tarax or Skarbrand, who both were considered pretty good legendary lords. She's better than either of them because she has a good economy to back that and a good army to back that. Like, Tarax doesn't have a good army until the mid to late game, though he doesn't have to worry about the economy. Whereas Skarbrand has an absolutely crap economy until you get a massive empire that spawns the world. Then you can maintain a lot of armies, but yeah, that takes a lot of time. To be fair, you can probably do that faster as Skarbrand than pretty much anyone else, but you do have major downsides in his particular playstyle. Downsides, like, she's not quite the wrecking ball Skarbrand has, but the fact she doesn't have any of the negatives and gets some fairly significant benefits herself does put her in an extraordinarily good position. Oh, you want to have magic as the Bride of Khorne? Yeah, get the Cast Shrine. Engage in heresy against Khorne. Get cast sorcerers with metal or fire, or both, in your army. Get magic while playing a Khorne faction. Seems a bit silly, I admit, but it works. It works incredibly well, and Valkia ends up really benefiting from all of this. She's a bit of a meme in the community from it. Well, the trailer didn't help things, right? The trailer she had certainly didn't help her case, but I do believe she is genuinely very, very powerful as a legendary lord. And I've played the entire campaign as her in the Realms of Chaos, and yeah, she was a wrecking ball. Very fast, very quick to expand. Like, every Warrior of Chaos legendary lord can take over the world very quickly. Valkia will just do it faster than anyone else. Now, at number 3, we have Kholek Suneater, the mountain god, or rather the son of the mountain. His father was gigantic. He is pretty huge himself, and he is one of the strongest legendary lords in the entire game in terms of combat ability. And he has something that the likes of Skarbrand, Valkia, Grimgor, etc. don't have: scalability. See, his faction effects increase for every vassal. He gets 5% weapon strength, mass, and armor for each currently vassalized faction. This can get to ridiculous levels. Get 20 vassals, get double the damage on every single swing. One-shot every single unit, or two-shot every single unit or lord in the entire game. There's a lot of power behind that. And he also gets benefits as well to recruiting Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shoggoths. The minus 25% soul cost for the Carnage Incarnate Gift of Chaos is something that affects the Dragon Ogre Shoggoths. He is limited to 6 per army, but yeah, it's still going to be very powerful. Hell, a Dragon Ogre Doomstack with him is going to be incredibly powerful. He also gets access to all of the Chaos Gods, so he doesn't need to do the research. So the movement speed of Slaanesh, the growth and replenishment from Nurgle, the post-battle loot benefit of Khorne, he has all of that. This is one of the main reasons why the undivided legendary lords are better than the dedicated ones, because you get access to all those gifts. I mean, you even get access to a research one that Tzeentch has, provided you're willing to pay 10 control for it. You can eventually manage 10 control, but it is all provinces. I don't think it's worth it. But yeah, you do gain a lot. You have a lot of flexibility. You can dedicate your armies to individual gods. You can keep a monster army for Kholek, because that's really what Kholek is. Well, beyond the fact that he's a single-man Doomstack. But he personally is really focused on Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shoggoths. He gets campaign movement range, casualty replenishment range. Yeah, he's the Dragon Ogre boy, and he is incredibly powerful. I actually like making an army focused on trolls with him, because cast trolls, or rather armored cast trolls, are pretty good early game units. Some of the best, actually, early game units, though they do have leadership issues. But yeah, they're not going to take a lot of damage if you upgrade these boys to armored. They're going to do very well, and you certainly can recruit quite a few of them if you are playing as Chaos. And yeah, Kholek will naturally go down the path of buffing them, because you want to buff the Dragon Ogres with the skill tree. So you'd get with monstrous strength for weapon strength for them, and also melee attacks, so chance to hit, and weapon damage basically for them, making them even more powerful. You want to conquer all of Cathay? Make Vilitch your slave? Yeah, go with Kholek. He's actually stronger than Vilitch in a lot of ways. He's more flexible than Vilitch. He doesn't have the teleportation bullshit that Vilitch has, but outside of that, yeah, Kholek will eat Vilitch for lunch, if he can catch him. Incredibly strong, scalable in terms of his overall strength. If there is any particular downside with Kholek, it's as follows. His faction benefits, of course, are to buff him, right? Him personally. He does become really powerful, but he's not quite buffing the other armies of his faction as much. However, because he is Chaos Undivided, he does gain, by default, a lot of benefits to his entire faction. Growth, replenishment in foreign territory, etc. So, just by being Chaos Undivided, he's gaining those benefits. He may not have anything specific, but he certainly does have benefits for all of his armies in his faction in a way that the dedicated Chaos Champions don't have. Now, at number 2, there is Be'lakor, who you can play for free, the only free Legendary Lord of the Warriors of Chaos, if you can play Immortal Empires, owning the first 3 games. And he is by far and away the best Legendary Lord in the game without any of the paid DLC stuff. But he's also the second best Legendary Lord for the Warriors of Chaos. Why is that? Well, he can transform human lords into demon princes, so he can get demon princes to be generals, which, yeah, they're probably gonna be better than the Chaos Lord or the Chaos Sorcerer's Lord leading your army. So you get some really good lords to lead his other armies if he corrupts human lord. That's the first thing. Minus 25% for demon units upkeep, and then his own personal benefits. Shadow Shroud and all authority +2, undivided authority to his army. But this gets better, because there is a hidden bonus that isn't necessarily reflected, and it's this. Other Chaos Lords have a limit of 6 gifted units to their army. Be'lakor doesn't care. You want your Dragon Ogre Shag-Off spam? You won't be able to get that in Kholek unless you confederate with Kholek, which you can do. You want to get that? You want to get demons? You want to get every single possible unit in your arsenal and make a doom stack with that? You can. So for instance here, on any army, you can recruit, on turn 1, you can recruit a Hell Cannon and a bunch of demons. That is already potent enough. But this gets better. This gets much better, actually. Because you can upgrade, and you're the only one who can upgrade demons to exalted demons. So you take bloodletters, and you can upgrade it once you get the research. You can upgrade them to exalted bloodletters of Khorne, or demonettes to exalted demonettes, or plague bearers to exalted plague bearers, pink horrors to exalted pink horrors of Tzeentch. So you get an incredibly potent army. Now, I don't much care for exalted pink horrors, but or plague bearers, but bloodletters and demonettes, yeah, those are powerful, really good. And you get access to everything that someone like Kholek would get. And you start with all of the gifts of chaos, or with one of each god already unlocked. So you want to get the casting chance of Tzeentch, or the post-battle loot from Khorne, or start working towards the campaign movement range of Slaanesh, or get the growth from Nurgle eventually with the replenishment in foreign territory. You can get that on top of your default gift. Default Chaos Undivided gifts. That is incredibly potent to begin with. But it actually gets better than that. Like, on top of all of this, and the sheer power of the Warriors of Chaos, Be'lakor goes even further, because he's got portals. You know all those rifts in the base game? He can open them. Like, rift-wise, I'm not sure I can show you guys, but there is one here, and there should be one near Mortime. Actually, I'll just use the toggle fog. So if we look here, there is a rift here in the south. So oh, you want to get access to something like 4 Chaos Fortresses and a bunch of minor demonic factions as vassals? You can do that and then go conquer the south. Or you can start in the south and then go into the Empire directly. You have these 2 starting rifts, and you can create more rifts through unholy manifestations that you open. And it gives you a gifted unit of pink horrors, which is even better. So you can do this. Now, this is ridiculous. So you can recruit a lord, moving around the map, avoiding the navies, going into territories of factions that you're not at war with. They may not declare war on you, but even if they do, it's not really relevant as long as you keep the lord safe. Get into a province, set up a rift, and then spawn with Be'lakor over there. You can traverse the entire map. People have used this to get the Sword of Cain. Now, I've tried doing it, I've screwed up, but what you're supposed to do with the Sword of Cain... Now, being able to get the Sword Cain without being a Lariel, or maybe an Akari, is actually incredibly good. What you do, you build a portal here, you take these 2 settlements for yourself, you destroy all the armies of the Scourge of Cain, you let them keep the Shrine of Cain, get to level 3, you wait for a lord that they'll have in the shrine to get the sword, then you take it for yourself. And that's how you get it. The Sword of Cain. You can do this probably within, I don't know, 10 plus turns or something like that. And make an already powerful army freaking unstoppable. The Sword of Cain does have downsides, absolutely. But Be'lakor doesn't care about that. Because he's a warrior of chaos, legendary lord. He's incredibly potent by default. Rebellions are not a thing that happen for the warriors of chaos. Diplomatic relations are irrelevant by and large. The whole world can declare war on you, it doesn't matter. Because the AI generally won't attack a dark fortress, and even when they do, they likely won't win. Unless they have overwhelming force, it will take like the endgame armies to do it. And generally dark fortresses are actually not close to the endgame armies, with the exception of the one in Krakadrak. And so you're incredibly safe. You don't care about the downsides of the Sword of Cain. Though you don't necessarily care about the upsides either, because, yeah, you already have an incredibly bloody powerful army that will just steamroll the world. And Be'lakor can teleport around the world. It's kind of like Skarbrand as well. Like Valkia, like he's got one side of Skarbrand that Valkia doesn't have. Valkia gets the campaign movement range, right? But she can't, I believe, to benefit from the cults that Skarbrand can. Like if there's a cult of Khorne spawning on a map, you can instantly teleport Skarbrand to that province. Now it doesn't work like that for Be'lakor, but for the Rift, you can teleport around the map. Now Skarbrand is better than either Valkia or Be'lakor in that respect, and just the sheer flexibility across the map. But you have a much better economy as either Valkia or Be'lakor, or a much better campaign as either of them. You want to get the Demon Doom stack with a guy who can fight Skarbrand one-on-one and likely win? Maybe, maybe not. I think Be'lakor is weaker than Skarbrand, but Skarbrand is Skarbrand. But yeah, Be'lakor just has a lot to offer. Unleash the demonic hordes. Unleash a tide of death. Hell, you know what? I'm tempted, and I think I want to see someone do this. I would love someone to just make a Doom stack of 19 Hell Cannons. I want to see how that is in a campaign. I genuinely want to see how that is, because he can. He's the only one who can. And you can also, as Be'lakor, and I think the only one who can do it is Archaon, you can confederate with other legendary lords of the Warriors of Chaos. So, oh, hey, Azazel, you want to join me? So you can control Azazel, you can control Archaon, you can control Kholek. Sure, some of them won't be as powerful. Kholek won't be as powerful as if you have the campaign. But outside of a couple of things, you get most of their power. Outside of Kholek, right? That's a specific situation. Yeah, incredibly powerful. And fun, really. Having a lot of flexibility in your start. Go around the world. Make it a Southland adventure. A cafe adventure if you so desire. Though that would take some doing. But make a cafe adventure. Or Lustrian adventure. Choices, choices, choices. It's fun. It's good. It's fun. It's already a good race. A good faction. And it's just better it's just a better campaign. I would love to play a campaign as Be'lakor because I think he would actually be the most interesting legendary lord to play right now, just from a fun factor alone. So Be'lakor, number 2. And finally, and number 1 on this list, it is Archaon the Everchosen. Of course it is Archaon the Everchosen, for good reason. All the Warriors of Chaos, legendary lords, minus Sigvald, are incredibly potent. Even Sigvald is pretty good, he just has problems with corruption. But Archaon takes that and elevates it one step further. They all have downsides, they all have pluses, right? They're all missing stuff. But Archaon, 1, can confederate the other legendary lords, so you can gain most of their benefits, with the exception of, like, Kholek's weapon strength. That's a faction benefit, as well as, you know, the faction benefits as opposed to the lord benefit. So you can get the lords. That's already powerful enough. But unlike Be'lakor, sure, he can't get the exalted units, though he's still a champion, and he doesn't start with all these gifts, but he gets an extra gift of Chaos Undivided, which is nice. Like, yeah, get more missile resistance, casualty replenishment for Marauders early on, or attribute causes fear for all Undivided units. Faction leader against 25% of experience earned to other lords. This is actually different than a selfish benefit. Like, this helps your faction because it gives more experience to those other lords, which makes them more powerful. More tribute from vassals, 100%, and on and on and on. Quite a lot of things over there. You can benefit from that extra gift. He doesn't need to unlock all this stuff, but he can. You have a great deal of versatility when you're playing Archaon. Okay, all the Undivided lords except Sigvald are the best, right? But what takes him a step further? The faction benefits. 10% research rate for each vassal, 10 diplomatic relations for each vassal, with the demonic faction, Norscan factions, chaos factions basically, and 25 souls for each vassal. Now, to give you guys an idea, if you're playing as Archaon and I toggle Fagavor, how many vassals do you think you can get within the first 20 turns or so? I'll answer that. Up to 10, maybe even more, maybe a bit less, but up to 10. Especially now since we can confederate humans, so I'm guessing we can confederate Boris Ursus. Yeah, imagine vassalizing Boris Ursus. And each vassal gives you 10 diplomatic relation, 10% research rate, and 25 souls. So that's within the first 10-20 turns. Within the first 20 turns, really. You can get double the research rate, 250 souls per turn, and 100 to diplomatic relations. Which means that every single Chaos faction, every single Demonic, Norscan, and Warriors of Chaos faction is going to freaking love you. And that's within the first 20 turns. You can get a lot more than 20 vassals, by the way. Significantly more. And you can confederate with other legendary lords. So you can make Azazel. Confederate with Azazel, for instance. He's close enough, right? Confederate with others, or vassalize others. Vassalize the Demon Prince, vassalize Sinch, confederate with Kholek, and so on and so forth. Lots of choices, lots of options, lots of power. And you end up in a position where you have so many vassals that they literally will fight your wars for you. Because Archaon and so many military and diplomatic allies as well. It will be a huge confederation of chaos united against the world. Like, one of the things about Chaos is generally they're incredibly weak and they actually spend a lot of time fighting each other. Archaon unites them, either allies or vassals, and marches with all of them to the south. And no one can stop him. You declare war on a faction, or a faction declares war on you, which is suicidal, and you will have a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen armies, each of them controlled by a different vassal, marching against your foe, and wiping them out without you lifting a finger. There is a steamroll campaign. There is a power in a campaign. And then there's just literally leaving the game to be auto-played. That's what Archaon can do. You won't win per se with this, unless you wait for the endgame crisis. But yeah, your vassals can conquer the world for you. And then I guess you could just wait for the endgame crisis and win, because doing this yourself, well, I guess you could just find the settlement in a corner or something like that, occupy, loot, raise, or sack it again and again and again. You know, maybe go to cafe, do that for 80 turns, win the campaign, never have any issues, any threat. It's kind of too easy. It genuinely is too easy. The only early game challenge is Boris, and you have a better army than he does, because he only has 2 Warbear units that are good. Well, that and the Patriarch, and he himself is no slouch. But you have Hell Cannons. Actually, you have more than Hell Cannons. Archaon gets another benefit. He can recruit a Hell Cannon, sure, like Sigvald or Kholek. But you can also get the Swords of Chaos, Regiment of Renown, from level 2. These guys are really good. They're genuinely good. Cast Knights are pretty good right now, and these guys are top of the line Regiment of Renown. From turn 1, literally, just started the campaign, got Archaon to level 2. The Rogue Idol the Warzog gets is powerful, undeniably so. The Dragon Ogres Kholek can get. But Archaon is just such in a safe, strong position that it actually benefits him more to get these guys. Because, yeah, outside of a 1 battle against Boris, you won't face any real challenges for the entirety of the campaign. Oh, the end game, ultimate game crisis spawns. Who gives a shit? You got legions of vassals. It's their problem, not yours. As long as your dark fortresses are safe, it's all good. And that's what makes Archaon top dog of all the legendary lords of the Warriors of Chaos. Not the most fun. I'll be honest, not the most fun. I actually do prefer playing someone like Bellicor or Festus or Valkia than I prefer playing Archaon. But the power this guy has, like, this is easy mode campaign. And that's all there is to say. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and I'll see you boys next time. If you do enjoy the video, please leave a like, and I'll see you next time.